Standing on the sun-bleached porch of her late father's estate, Faith Summers watched a plume of dust rise from the horizon, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. It was 1875, and at 22, she was the unlikely mistress of Summers Crossing, a fading ranch nestled in the unforgiving New Mexico territory. Her world had shifted a month ago with a blunt, life-altering telegram: marriage arranged. Stop. Thomas Xavier arriving September. Stop. He will save the ranch. Stop. Faith tugged at the lace collar of her blue calico dress, feeling as though it were a noose. Her father's final act, a pact made on his deathbed with a comrade from the war, was to hand her over to a stranger. In her mind, she had spent weeks bracing for a man of 60 or more. She pictured a grizzled veteran with skin like cracked leather and a mouth of yellowing teeth. He would be good, as her father promised, but he would be a relic. As the rider drew closer, the silhouette of a massive black stallion became clear. Faith swallowed hard, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. She was prepared to meet her fate with grace, even if it meant a lifetime tied to an old man. The horseman pulled the reins near the ranch gate, and Faith's breath hitched. This was no aged soldier. The man in the saddle was broad-shouldered and sat with a commanding, youthful grace. As he dismounted with effortless athleticism, she realized her assumptions were entirely wrong. He appeared to be no older than 30. Instead of the flowing white beard she had envisioned, he had a strong, sharp jawline dusted with dark stubble. When he pulled off his hat, a mane of thick, wavy dark hair was revealed. "Miss Summers?" he asked. His voice was a rich, deep baritone with the unmistakable lilt of a Texan drawl. "Yes," she managed to whisper, her pulse racing. "I am Faith Summers." He ascended the porch steps, looming over her. Up close, the only lines on his face were those earned from years of squinting into the western sun. "Thomas Xavier, ma'am," he said, extending a hand. "Though most call me Ty." Faith took his hand hesitantly, her eyes wide. You aren't what I expected." A flicker of amusement danced in his piercing blue eyes. "You were expecting an old man, weren't you?" Faith nodded, her face warming with a sudden blush. Ty's smile widened, flashing straight, white teeth. "It's just me, Miss Summers. Young, and yours, if you'll have me." "Please, Mr. Xavier, come in," she stammered, gesturing toward the door. "You must be exhausted." "Ty," he corrected softly. "If we're to be wed, you should use my name." She led him into the humble ranch house. The main room was a quiet space where the parlor met the dining area, anchored by a massive stone hearth. She had spent the morning scrubbing every inch of the floor and polishing what little fine furniture they had left. The savory scent of simmering beef stew drifted from the stove. Ty scanned the room with a keen eye. "Your father always spoke of this land's potential." Faith's fingers nervously bunched the fabric of her skirt. "It was a fine place once. But between the drought 2 years back and the cattle fever last spring, we lost over half the herd. When the money ran out, the ranch hands moved on. Now, it's just me and old Ezra trying to keep the ghost of this place alive. He's been with us since I was a child," Faith explained, her voice softening. Ty leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Our fathers served together in the Mexican-American War. They saved each other's lives more times than they cared to count. When my father passed last year, I discovered letters from yours, pleas for help that my father was too ill to answer. I knew I had to honor that bond." Faith felt a pang of uncertainty. "So, you came out of a sense of duty?" "I came because a pact between good men matters," Ty countered firmly. "But also because I was looking for a fresh start myself." He paused, searching her eyes. "I know this isn't the life you envisioned. If you want to call off the arrangement, I'll understand." "No," Faith said, the word leaving her lips faster than she expected. "The ranch is failing, and I can't save it alone." A brief shadow flickered across Ty's face, but he gave a sharp, decisive nod. Then I'll give everything I have to make it right. They ate their stew in a silence that was no longer heavy, but observational. Faith found herself noting the strength in his calloused hands and the quiet grace with which he moved. He was undeniably handsome, possessing a rugged character that seemed carved from the very land he'd come to save. "Tomorrow, I'll scout the property," Ty said as he finished. "The south pasture fence is a priority," Faith suggested, "and the creek is drying up. We need to find out why." When it was time to turn in, Faith led him to her father's former room. An awkward stillness settled in the hallway. "The circuit preacher arrives every third Sunday," Faith said, her eyes fixed on her boots. "He'll be here in 10 days for the ceremony." 10 days, Ty repeated. "Unless you'd prefer to wait? To get to know me better?" Faith looked up, meeting his steady gaze. "The ranch can't wait. We need to be partners." "I agree," Ty said softly. "But Faith, I won't rush you. A marriage is just words on a page until two people decide it's something more. We'll take it at your pace." Relief washed over her like a cool breeze. "Thank you for that, Ty." The following morning, Faith found Ty already in the barn at daybreak. He had saddled 2 horses, his work-worn denims and rolled-up sleeves revealing the corded muscle of his forearms. "I thought you might want to lead the way," he said with a tilt of his hat. Faith appreciated the respect he showed for her knowledge of the land. As they rode, she pointed out the parched creek bed and the areas where the soil had turned to dust. Despite the hardships, the valley remained breathtaking under the purple hue of the distant mountains. "My mother's family were pioneers here," Faith told him. "My father came through with the army, met her, and never left. He used to say she lassoed his heart faster than a wild mustang." Ty laughed, a warm, resonant sound. "It sounds like a rare kind of love." It was. But when she died 10 years ago, a part of him went with her. He lost his heart for the ranch. Ty studied her closely. "And you? Do you still have the heart for it?" "This land is in my blood," she answered without a second of doubt. "I won't let it go." Over the next week, they fell into the rhythm of ranch life. Ty worked from dawn until dusk on repairs, while Faith managed the house and assisted with the heavy labor whenever possible. Ezra, the loyal hand who had been with the Summers family for decades, took Ty under his wing, teaching him the secrets of the New Mexico weather. The silence between Faith and Ty gradually transformed into a comfortable companionship. She found herself admiring the quiet purpose in his movements and the rare, genuine smile that could transform his stern face. One evening, after Ty had spent an exhausting day reviving the well pump, Faith noticed the weariness in his frame. "You're driving yourself into the ground," she said as she set his plate down. "Winter is coming, Faith. There's no time for rest. The ranch won't benefit from you being bedridden with exhaustion," she reminded him gently. He looked up, seemingly touched by her concern. "I suppose you have a point." After dinner, instead of retiring early, Ty stayed at the table. Faith brought out an old wooden chess set. "Do you know the game?" Ty's eyes brightened. "My father taught me, though I'm likely a bit rusty." As they played, the tension of the upcoming wedding seemed to melt away. Ty was a strategic player, moving with the same deliberation he applied to the ranch, but he met every one of Faith's successful moves with a flash of humor and a newfound respect. In the glow of the lamplight, the future of Summers Crossing finally began to look bright. "You're a formidable opponent," Ty remarked after Faith claimed victory in their second game of chess. "My father played through the long winter months when the snow kept us inside," she replied, her eyes softening. "Tell me about him," Ty requested, leaning back. "My father spoke of him with such profound respect, but I knew so little of the man personally." Faith found herself opening up, sharing memories of her father's love for music, his laughably bad singing voice that he'd jokingly inflict on the cattle, and the patient way he'd taught her to ride. He sounds like he was an exceptional father, Ty said quietly. He was, Faith whispered, blinking back a sudden prickle of tears. He did his best after Mama died. I think he arranged this because he couldn't bear the thought of leaving me unprotected. He wanted to know I'd be looked after. Ty reached across the table, his hand briefly covering hers. The contact sent an unexpected jolt of warmth through her. I promise you, Faith, I will honor his wishes. I'll take care of you, and I'll take care of this ranch. He held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than necessary before standing to clear the chess pieces. It's late. Tomorrow, we should head into town for supplies. The next morning, they made the 2-hour trek to Willow Creek. Faith wore her finest green cotton dress and matching bonnet, while Ty had traded his work clothes for a clean white shirt and dark vest. He had shaved, revealing the sharp, handsome line of his jaw. As they hitched their horses on the main street, Faith felt the weight of a dozen curious eyes. News travels fast, she murmured. They all know who you are. Ty offered his arm. Let them look. We have nothing to hide. Inside the general store, Mr. Patterson greeted them with an eager grin. Miss Summers. And this must be the famous Mr. Xavier. We've heard the Summers place is finally getting back on its feet. As they gathered flour and coffee, Faith noticed several local women lingering nearby, their eyes darting toward Ty's tall, commanding frame. An unexpected spark of possessiveness flared in her chest. She stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his arm. We'll need more salt pork, too, she said, her voice slightly firmer. Ty glanced down at her hand, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. Whatever you think we need, darling. The endearment was for the benefit of the audience, yet it left Faith's heart fluttering. Their trip was interrupted by a shout from the street. A group of rough-looking men had emerged from the saloon, and one was aggressively accosting Florence Miller, the town schoolteacher. Those are Carter's men, Faith whispered urgently. They've been trouble since they moved north of here. Without a word, Ty handed the packages to Faith and strode toward the commotion. I believe the lady would like to be on her way, he called out, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. The lead cowboy, stumbling slightly from drink, sneered. Mind your own business, stranger. When you manhandle a lady in public, it becomes everyone's business, Ty replied coolly. The cowboy lunged, but Ty sidestepped him with practiced ease, tripping the man and sending him face first into the dirt. The rest of the gang moved in menacingly, but the click of a rifle stopped them cold. Sheriff Morris had stepped out of his office. That's enough, Carter boys. Get back to your ranch before I throw you in a cell to sober up. As they retreated, the leader spat a threat toward Ty. This isn't over. Nobody makes a fool of Bert Carter. On the ride back to the ranch, Faith remained quiet, the incident weighing on her. Are you worried about the Carters? Ty asked. They've stolen cattle and disputed our water rights for a year, she admitted. They took advantage when Pa got sick. That ends now, Ty said firmly. Faith studied his profile. You weren't afraid. It was 5 against 1. Ty shrugged. I've faced worse odds in the war, and later, as a marshal in the Dakota Territory. I've learned that bullies usually fold when someone stands their ground. This was a side of Ty she hadn't known. Is that why you came here? For peace. Ty's eyes grew distant. I came for something real. Something worth building. He looked at her then, his gaze intense. Your father's letters, he said you had your mother's beauty and a spirit that would make any man lucky to call you wife. Faith felt her cheeks flush as Ty spurred his horse forward, leaving her to ponder the weight of his words. The following Sunday arrived under a clear, brilliant sky. Faith stood before her mirror, adjusting the white lace collar of her blue dress. She had opted against her mother's wedding gown. It felt too heavy with a history she hadn't yet earned with Ty. A knock sounded at the door. "Faith? May I come in?" She opened it to find Ty looking striking in a dark suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked handsome enough to make her breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you," she replied, smoothing her skirt. "You look quite wonderful yourself." Ty's expression turned serious. "Before we go out there, I wanted to speak with you in private." He reached into his pocket, his gaze locked onto hers. Ty reached into his coat and withdrew a folded parchment. "I had this drawn up in town yesterday," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "It's a new deed to the ranch. It places both our names on the title. I want you to know that regardless of what happens between us, this land is half yours." Faith's fingers trembled as she took the document. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say a thing. I didn't come here to take your legacy from you, Faith. I came to build a life with you." He paused, searching her expression for any hint of doubt. "If you're having second thoughts about the ceremony." "No," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "No second thoughts. I'm ready." The wedding was a modest affair held in the front parlor. Old Ezra and a few neighbors stood as witnesses while Reverend William spoke of partnership and mutual respect. When it came time for the vows, Ty's voice was a steady anchor. Faith's breath hitched slightly, but she met his gaze with unwavering resolve as she promised to honor him. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Ty leaned down and brushed a gentle, lingering kiss against her lips. The warmth of it stayed with her long after the guests had departed. That evening, a quiet awkwardness returned to the house. "I've moved my trunks into the master bedroom," Ty noted, "but I've made up a cot for myself in the small room off the kitchen. Like I said, I won't rush you." Faith felt a complicated tug of both relief and a strange, quiet disappointment. "Thank you, Ty. That's very kind of you." The following week fell into a peaceful routine, though the air was charged with the new reality of their union. Each time Ty introduced her to a passerby as "my wife," Faith felt a thrill, followed by the sobering reminder that their vows were born of necessity. One afternoon, while Faith was harvesting the last of the summer vegetables, the thud of hooves broke the silence. Her stomach tightened as she recognized Bert Carter and 3 of his brothers. She hurried to the barn to find Ty. "The Carters are here," she whispered. Ty's jaw set. He set down his tools and stood tall. "Stay behind me." They met the riders in front of the house. Bert sat atop his horse with a mocking sneer, his face still bruised from their encounter in town. "Well, if it isn't the happy couple. We thought we'd stop by to pay our respects." "That's neighborly," Ty replied, his stance alert and dangerous. "Though most folks bring a gift, not a small army." Bert dismounted, his brothers following suit. They didn't bother hitching their horses, a sign they didn't plan on a long stay. "We have a problem, Xavier. Before you showed up, Miss Summers and I were discussing a sale." "That's a lie." Faith snapped. "Your father then," Bert barked, cutting her off. He knew this place was too much for a woman. He wanted out. "Well, she's not alone now," Ty intervened, his voice low and steady. "And the ranch isn't for sale." Bert spat into the dust. "That's a shame. We need this land for our herd, and we need the water rights. Our creek barely sustains us," Faith protested. "That's your concern, not mine," Bert shrugged. "Our offer stands, $5,000 for the whole spread. Take it and run." "The property is worth triple that," Ty countered. Bert's eyes narrowed into slits. "You're new here, Xavier. You don't realize that the Carters are the law out here. Sheriff Morris only rules the town. Think on it. Money spends a lot better than pride, and some men aren't worth dying for, especially when the ink on the marriage lines is still wet." That night, As they watched the sun dip below the mountains, Faith studied Ty's profile. "You knew there would be trouble. Is it worth it to you?" Ty turned to her, his blue eyes intense in the twilight. "Is it worth it to you?" "This is my home," she said simply. "Then it's worth it." He reached out, taking her hand and stroking her knuckles with his thumb. "Faith, when I agreed to come here, I thought I was just fulfilling a duty to my father. But these past weeks, I've stopped thinking about obligation. I'm thinking about us." Faith's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm grateful it was you at the end of that long trail. I'm beginning to care for you in ways that have nothing to do with property or promises." "I feel the same," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was so afraid of marrying a stranger. Now, I'm just afraid of losing you to men who think they can take whatever they want." Ty brought her hand to his lips, kissing her palm. "You won't lose me. I promise." That night, for the first time, Faith asked Ty to stay. Their union was gentle and reverent, a silent confirmation of the love growing between them. "I think I'm falling for you," she murmured against his chest. "I think I've already fallen," he replied, holding her close. The peace was shattered at dawn by the crack of gunfire. Ty was out of bed instantly, reaching for his revolver. "Stay inside," he commanded. "No," Faith said, grabbing her robe. "This is my home, too." They ran outside to find the fence cut and several cattle lying dead in the pasture. Old Ezra stood in the yard, his rifle smoking. "It was the Carters," he rasped. "They rode through before the sun was up." Ty's face was a mask of fury. "This ends now." He rode to town to alert the sheriff, but found him paralyzed by the Carters' influence. However, help came from an unexpected source, Florence Miller. She informed them that the local ranchers were meeting that night, tired of being bullied. Ty, with his background as a marshal, was chosen to lead the unified front. The escalation was swift. A few nights later, the Carters returned and torched the barn. Faith and Ty risked their lives to drag the screaming horses from the flames, watching in heartbreak as the structure collapsed into ash. But the next morning, the community arrived. By sunset, a new frame was already rising from the soot. The final confrontation came at midnight. 10 riders approached the house, led by Bert. "Xavier, come out and face us," Bert bellowed. "Setting fire to animals in the night isn't the work of a man, Bert," Ty shouted back from the shadows of the porch. "It's the work of a coward." Gunfire erupted, splintering the porch railing. Faith held her father's old shotgun with steady hands. "Aim for the ground," Ty whispered. "We want to break them, not start a massacre." As they traded fire, the road suddenly erupted with lanterns and shouts. Frank Miller and 20 armed ranchers charged in. The Carters, realizing they were outnumbered and outmatched, broke ranks and fled into the darkness. The next morning, the sheriff arrived with news. Bert Carter had been wounded, and his father, realizing the territory had turned against them, was moving the family back to Texas. "Good riddance," the sheriff muttered. When the dust finally settled, Ty pulled Faith into his arms on the porch. "We did it," she sobbed into his chest. "We saved the ranch." "We saved more than that," Ty whispered. "We built a life." 1 year later, Faith stood on the same weathered porch, a small bundle cradled in her arms, their daughter, Margaret. The ranch was thriving, the cattle were fat, and the new barn stood as a monument to their resilience. She smiled as Ty rode in from the north pasture. He dismounted with that familiar, easy grace and climbed the steps to kiss her and their child. "How are my girls?" he asked softly. "We missed you," Faith replied, leaning into him. As the sun set, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of gold and violet, they stood together, no longer strangers bound by a telegram, but a family bound by a love as vast as the horizon.